Welcome to Fairfield Public Access Television. I'm Susan Kessel, and Connie Boyer and I have a show, Opening Fairfield Doors.
And our mission statement of the show is, by opening the doors into the people and places of Fairfield, we will strive to promote appreciation, awareness, and understanding of one another. And I think today we're going to love this show. Today we have with us Joe Little, and we're in his home, and he's going to tell us some things today that only a few people know in Fairfield, and how we got to, I should say, how we found out we were going to interview Joe was I was talking to my father a few weeks ago, and he was telling a lot of things about his history and music and such, and he said, and he mentioned Joe, and he said, oh, now that would be a really good person to interview for your show. So I had gone to the rededication out at the Armory, and of course Joe was recognized as a past band director. And I went up to him afterwards and introduced myself because he and my father go a long way back. So we're just really delighted to be here today and glad that you are willing to do this, Joe. And so, well, where should we start? Should we start at the very beginning of your life?
Well, that's a long time ago.
We won't ask how old you are, but were you born in Fairfield?
No, I was born in Mount Pleasant. Moved here when I was a year old in 1913. In a couple of months I'll be 90. So there's a little water went under the bridge there.
You're about the same age as my father then.
Probably. I didn't think anybody lived that long.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, went to school here all my life. Went to Lincoln School, all 8 grades. But I was an ornery guy then. I'd rather fight than go to school. In fact, a boy here in town by the name of Pete Makepeace, isn't living now. He
recognize the name.
I do too.
He was just like I was, and he and I would get together before school started in the morning, and would pick a fight, maybe inside, maybe outside, so they'd make us go home. But we didn't go home. We had a tobacco can with some worms in it and some fish line, and we'd go out here to a creek and go fishing all day. And I'd get a tanning when I got home, but so what? That's just another day.
It was worth it.
Another day, probably the same thing. And I was one that I could hit my nose with my hand, it'd bleed. And I'd get sent home every time with that. And when I was in 8th grade, stayed in 2 or 3 grade 2 years. And when I was in 8th grade, I was 16. And I quit school because I thought I knew more than they did. I'd been there longer than they were. So I quit. And where Whitney Monument is now was the Heston Anderson Woodworking Machine Company, and I had done all her painting there. And in September 1929, the coach at the high school, Lou Lincoln, come out and visit my dad, and he wanted to know if he cared if I came back to school. And my dad said he can go back anytime he wants to. I didn't tell him to quit, so I notified him at the shop I was going to quit, and I did, and I walked through the tracks to go home. And back in those days, they had 2 sections here in Fairfield for the railroad. 6 men went east, 6 men went west every morning. Be gone 8 hours on a little gasoline car, and I always wanted to ride one of those things. And the West End team had just come in, and he said, what are you doing, Joe? And I said, nothing, I just quit Heston Anderson. He said, how would you like to work on the second? I said, yeah. Well, fill his card out and come back over. Well, I caught the devil then, because I was supposed to go to school the next day. But I went to work on the section, got to ride that car, and about 3 weeks later, I thought I didn't want to do that. So I went back to school. Superintendent Penn said, you got to have your 8th grade report card. I said, I don't have one. What do you mean you don't have one? I said, I didn't finish 8th grade. Well, he said, you got to have one. So the lady that was a principal then, her name was Blanche Banna, and she married a man by the name of Bailey, who run a hardware store where Gobble's store was. He called her and he said, wanted to know if my grades were good enough in 8th grade to go to high school, and she said yes, and she lied. They weren't good enough to go back to 6th grade, let alone to high school. But I started 3 weeks late, and as you know, when you're a freshman, you can't miss nothing on the start, especially in math. Math was just, nobody ever proved to me X ever meant anything.
I understand.
I learned what it meant later. But anyway, I was going to school, first day of school, and one of the fellows in the high school band said to the band director, here's a guy who'll be a drum major. And I didn't even know what a drum major was. And he said, will you? And I said, yes. Well, come down to the armory. This is on a Monday. I went down there and met this Charlie Brown, who was the 2nd drum major in the band. And he showed me what to do. So I stayed as drum major in high school all 4 years. And in 1937, the fellow that was the drum major became the bandmaster, and I became the drum major of the band, which wound up to be 33 years.
Oh my goodness.
Now, anybody that old shouldn't be a drum major, but I didn't want to give it up.
Wow.
But in 1933, the World Fair was on in Chicago, and that picture hanging there on the wall over on the right there is a picture of the first band up in the corner. And the drum major was the manager of the men's department in the fair store on the south side of the square. And he couldn't, we were at camp, and this bandmaster said, how would you fellas like to go to Chicago and play a week at the World's Fair? Yeah, we'd like that. And he had made all these arrangements. None of us knew this. Well, he said, what it is, you have to pay your own way over there and back. And we got a place to stay at the Naval Armory, free, that won't cost nothing. But you'll have to get yourself from the Armory to the fairgrounds, which was 1 mile. And the Naval Armory was at the foot of Randolph Street in Chicago, which where it was is a highway now. But anyway, we went to the fair, and I was the drum major. And during the World Fair, they would take on a band, 1 band a week, and you were the official band at the fair. You played for all dignitaries. We played 2 concerts a day, and any parades. Well, they had a parade while we were there, and they had about a half a mile before you got to the main entrance, 32nd Street. They had an avenue of flags, you call it, of every nation, probably some that weren't a nation, but it was pretty. And right along the beach, and he said, I went with this fella that they were going to have an Indian parade, all Indian. And they did. They had Indians from Canada to Mexico and all over the United States, and they all had a queen. None of them under 50, I don't think. And most of them weighed a half a ton. They were big, but they sat in a touring car with a hat on, and they had probably 3 Indian bands. None of them marched, they just walked. I mean, they keep no cadence. But the music they played was beautiful. And they were behind us. And when you get the 32nd Street entrance, is right where the entrance is, where you go into the Soldiers Field in Chicago. It says you go in the gate and go down the football field and come back and play them all in, and then you can leave. I did that, and I dare say I was probably the only man in Fairfield ever played in Soldier Field. But they play football there now, but maybe not.
So
But
this was part of the National Guard band then?
yeah, it was the whole band, yeah.
Okay. And
Now, we were in camp, mind you, and we had to buy our own ticket. Do you know what it cost to go to Des Moines now by train? I don't know. But then we had to buy our own ticket. I was a private first class. We were at camp for 12 days, got $15. Well, before you went to camp, you sold a canteen book, tickets, for $5. It's how much in it. And you could spend that at the canteen for, chocolate milk ice cream or white candy bar, whatever. And then when you got paid, the commanding officer sitting at the pay table, and you paid him $6. So it cost you $1 for the canteen book. Well, when I got paid, I took the $6 from 15, that left me, and that's all. And this is during the Depression. I had to pay. It cost $5 round trip from Fairfield to Chicago. Now I don't think you get to Burlington for $5
no, I don't think so.
round trip. And we got home in the afternoon, about 5 o'clock on Sunday. At midnight, there was a baggage car and coach up on the railroad. We went down, got in, and this guy had all this rigged, already planned. The Navy Coast Guard there met us at the train with trucks, hauled us down to the Naval Armory. Now we had to get from, as I said, down to the fairgrounds on your own. So there was a private affair, had a makeshift bus. We'd go down and ride that. It cost $0.25. Well, with not very much money in your pocket, you couldn't ride that. We didn't stay out there all the time. So the taxis line up there. And he said, taxi driver says one day, he says, why are you riding that old bus? Well, we said, because it's cheaper than riding a taxi. And one of the guys lied. Said, we ride that for, if we take 5 guys, it'd take us out there for 10 cents a piece. Well, he says, I'll take you out there. So he did. And now how are you going to eat a week in Chicago on less than $5? Well, I'll tell you how. I don't do this no more. None of you kids listen, don't do this.
Don't try this at home.
We'd go downtown, and one fellow would go in a restaurant, a big restaurant, and get a table clear in the back, and he'd sit down. And 5 more would come in one at a time, shake hands, glad to see you again, all that. Sit down, we'd order. And when they left, they'd leave one at a time. And when they'd leave, they'd say, that guy back there will pay the ticket. Well, whoever was left said, yeah, I don't know those guys. I don't owe them nothing. So, but 5 or 6 of us would chip in and buy one meal, and that's how we got by.
You guys were kind of ornery, weren't
Oh,
you?
yeah.
And this was during the Depression?
Huh?
During the Depression?
Yeah, in 33. And that was the first year 3-2 beer came in. Ben Burney, did you ever hear Ben Burney? He was a big time band leader he'd always say yowza, yowza.
Oh.
Ben Burney had a good band. He had an open air pavilion there, and he was the band for Pap Blue Ribbon. A good band, and open air, and jack-o'-lanterns all around up overhead, and a big floor. I have no idea how big, it was big. And we'd go up there, and then around the edges, had a little fence built around. And when those guys, they all drinking beer out of the bottle, when they get up and go dance, we'd drink their beer. He'd come back and hold up that bottle of beer. They knew they had beer in there, and then we'd stand off and laugh. Well, that's how we got by with that trip.
So it sounds like you've had lots of good times in your band.
That was a lot of fun. That I never did know what that Indian parade was for, but didn't make any difference.
Did they play Indian music?
No, they played regular band music.
Oh, okay.
They played good, sounded good, but they didn't keep any cadence in more like a high school or army band would. Then we came home, went about our business. Along come the war. We knew in 1939 we had an inkling something was going to happen in 37, but in 1939 we were up at Camp Ripley, Minnesota, and they had an English pilot there talking to the non-coms and officers, and we didn't say anything about us being in a war, but you could sort of feel it that we're going to. So then in 1940, then we knew we were going someplace, didn't know where. Finally, it came about that we were going to go to Claiborne for a year's training. Well, we did that.
Where is that?
Louisiana. We did that, except it wound up to be about 5 years. Oh. We went in 1941, got home in 1945.
So is this the band that went?
No, they had a service company and a medical company. Did you ever know Zeke Vandervoorde?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, Zeke's out in the hospital.
Right.
With, I don't know what all he's got, but I
We
didn't.
have some competition with the clocks.
I
Not a
didn't.
woodpecker, a cuckoo clock.
Didn't know that many medics, but I dare say that Zeke was probably one of the best medics. But he saved a lot of men's life.
That's neat.
You'd never know it to talk to him, but those guys all called him Doc, you know. He was
Never knew
wounded
that.
3 times. All 3 times he could have came home.
Sounds like you were a close friend.
Well, yeah,
He was.
he was with everybody, but that's the way Zeke was. Then we lived in Ireland, January 42. Their year, shipped out of Liverpool Harbor Christmas Day at noon. Just sit down to eat, and the whistle blew, and we were leaving. And the orchestra played 6 shows that night on board ship. And we were on a ship that we didn't know when we got on, didn't know it till later. But did you ever hear of Kaiser Wilhelm? Mm-hmm. He was the Tsar of Germany during World War I. Similar to Hitler, only worse, because he used gas and Hitler didn't. But the ship we were on, he had built to make his victory cruise around the world. Beautiful ship, beautiful, big winding stairways up, and all first three graders enlisted men, that staff sergeant, tech sergeant, master sergeant, and officers had staterooms. And there was 12,000 on that boat, so you know how big it was. And 10 miles out of Oran, Sergeant Jackson and he said, let's go up on top and see if we can see the lights. And we did run up on deck. We were going to get off in Oran, and you could see the cars, vehicles running. And while we standing there on the rail, a fellow come up and said, boy, he sure rammed us, didn't he? And he said, what do you mean he rammed us? He said, did you see that light coming out of that hole back there? And I told Jackson, I said, that looks like about where the band is. We was right on the water level on D deck. So we run down there, and sure enough, it had a hole there you could drive a truck through. And boy by the name of Bud McGlasson and Harold McChesney, they're both passed now, had been there playing Honeymoon Bridge. They were the only one down there. All the duffel bags was out on the deck because we was going to get off. But they were gone too. And we got out of there and didn't, the lights went out, of course, immediately. The engines went dead. Ship goes both ways. And every time it looked like he could touch the water. And they give the order to go to the boat station to go and evacuate the ship. And I don't know, for some reason, people, you have, in schools they have fire drills, just like out where where she lives, Littleton. Those schools, they have school drills, but when something like that happens, those things don't mean the practice you do, it goes haywire. Everybody runs every direction. Well, nobody got to, and Jackson and I went right back up, stood against the rails, undone our boots. We had a life jacket on, but we didn't want to swim with those boots on. So if we went over, we kicked them boots off. Well, we couldn't have got away from the rail if it had went down. We was shoved up in there so hard we couldn't get away. But that finally, they didn't want to break radio silence because we were just coming in to invade Africa, and they were wallering, getting into a minefield, so they dropped anchor, and we stayed out there all night going this way, and all them people out on deck, nobody down below.
Sounds like you could do a movie of this.
Yeah, well,
Sounds like everything's happening.
You hear these, I do hear these boats getting rammed, you know, things like that. Like the Titanic, I think, what that must have been like. Terrible.
So how did you get off?
Well, we stayed out there, and the next day, I don't know where they claimed they didn't have anything big enough to tow us in that night. But where this boat came from, I don't know. But they drug us into the dock, and we got off, got our barracks bag. Now in this duffel bag, everybody had 2 wool blankets, at least 2 more wool uniforms, socks, underwear, everything you had were in those 2 duffel bags. Now you can imagine, you know how one wool army blanket, how heavy that would be soaked. Oh. Now we got your duffel bags, had 2 of them, and you couldn't carry them on your back because you had a rifle and a gas mask and a full pack that hung clear down to your knees, and there's no way, you just had to drag them. But finally got out on a hill, just rock. It was a hill, wasn't they call it a mountain, just a hill with flat rock. Laid those stuff all out and they turned white, salt water. And we didn't have anything to sleep in but what we had on. Oh, hell, for a week.
And this was off the coast of.
In Oran, just out of Oran, Africa.
Okay.
So was this part of the army then that you were in?
Oh,
or?
he was in the army, yeah.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
you were seeing live action and all
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of thing.
Hadn't yet.
Yeah.
That was enough.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But then while we were on that rock, waiting to, unfortunately, our instruments didn't get involved in the water. They had a general.
So you had your music instruments with you.
Oh yeah, we played. We were out Christmas Eve. I told you, played those shows Christmas Eve. This general liked the dance band. He really did. He had a picture of a girl that he was going with, and he'd take that up to the piano player, and he had a certain tune was their part, and he had to play it regardless of what he was playing. So he ordered this, that the orchestra equipment would be the last thing loaded on the ship, and that'd be left on the elevator. And it was. So when we got out to sea, Christmas Eve, all I had to do was just bring it up, and found everything but the library, their music. But the guys that played that music so long, they knew most of it by heart. The ones they didn't play, they didn't know they didn't play. And then we were still on New Year's Eve, still on ship, and they played, I don't know, 6 or 7 more shows. But that was a hell of a time to be going to battle at Christmas Eve.
I guess so. It's always amazing to me that you're doing this, you're going into battle, but you still have your instruments.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, we didn't see our instruments in Africa, but it's leading up to this band thing, I'll tell you. We came home. Oh, I didn't. Italy, that was another thing. Up into Italy in '43, I think, we were joined up with this band from Minnesota to form a division band. And then, up to then, we had been command post security. That's the regimental, where the colonel and the regimental headquarters are. And he got the band, that was our duty. Up to then in Africa, the Army, they didn't have that all thought out, that wartime. The first battle we got into, I don't remember sure what company it was. Anyway, they had 7 men killed. And the captain went to the colonel and said, "Who's going to bury these guys?" Well, he says, "Each unit will have to bury their own." Well, they thought that wouldn't be good at all, because these people had been laying out in the desert for a day or two, some longer, and they were twice as big as an army should be. So they said, well, the special units can do it then. That meant anti-tank, headquarters company, service company from Fairfield, the medics, and the band. Now those other units were all real busy. They were still fighting the war. We were just standing guard security around. So the band got to bury the dead, which was no good.
Yeah.
Well, when we got to division, that all stopped. The general we had, he said that the band belonged back to play for hospitals and stuff like that. So I had probably had 2 big bands 16, 18 pieces, and 2 small ones, 12 piece, out of the band. I was busy, at least 5 days a week, going way back, getting into general hospitals, station hospitals, evacuation hospitals, any place where there were troops, because they didn't know anybody was around, USO shows, they didn't get up there. They never got that far up. In fact, we didn't see any in Italy. But anyway, that was in Italy, that was our big deal there. Well, in Africa, you've probably maybe read or heard about the Kasserine Pass. Probably not. That was on.
I don't think so.
They're listed in that program, the different things they were in. But all of Africa was lumped into one battle. And the Germans made a frontal assault on the American lines and happened to be the 168th from Council Bluffs. They
My uncle was probably in that.
Huh?
My uncle was probably in that because I
Probably.
know that he went to Africa and that's where he was from.
So he can tell you all this, what I'm going to tell you. They made a frontal assault, captured the whole band, headquarters company, part of the service company. I don't know how many 100 men they captured. So the 168th didn't have a band. Three men escaped out of the band. You know what? All 3 of them were French horn players. Isn't that odd? You'd think there'd be a trumpet and a drummer maybe. But they were all, and they attached them to our band then till the war was over. And but when the war was over, the English had a victory parade in Tunis, and they invited one American regiment. As far as the British concerned, we weren't even there. They thought they were doing a great deal inviting one regiment, but they didn't have a band, so we got to lead the victory parade in Tunis, and this news reporter for the Des Moines Register, what was his name? He died here a few years ago. His daughter's named Connie, I believe. Don't make any difference. Of all I've seen, there were, must have been 100 photographers taking pictures, and I've never been able to find, and I've watched all the war movies on the film on TV showing the African campaign, but none about that parade. And for one reason, that commanding general we have didn't believe in photographers nor newspaper people or nothing. And we didn't have any. And I wrote to her after her father died sometime if she would look. And he was there, and I know he took pictures. Gordon Gammick.
Oh, yes.
But I never heard from her. But anyway, we got to lead that parade. I thought that was the biggest parade I ever played in my life. No idea how many thousands of people.
I'm sure it was a very exciting time
yeah.
and very happy time.
Yeah. Well, this same incident that happened with the 168 could have happened. We were on their left flank. They were here and we were here. And they thought they were going to come our way. So they called them orderly withdrawals. Instead of saying retreat, orderly withdrawal sounds better. So we retreated, and got barbed wire set up and mines laid and everything. Waited and waited for them to come, and they never came. And they sent out recon, find out what happened. The Germans retreated the same night we did. Our artillery had caused that, but it just happened. So when we get home now, we're going to come up to date now. This colonel that was our regimental commander, his name was Fountain, Ray C. Fountain. He was a federal judge in Des Moines. This is in 1946, 1947. But he was a federal judge in 46. Anyway, Jackson and I had signed up in the service company in 21 November of 46. That's when they were activated, and the medics. And I was asked by the Gamreth, CO, to be if I would take the supply sergeant. And I said, yeah, I would. Well, you had to have a supply book of everything you got. And in the Army, or the service, everything that mounts to anything like a band instrument, any parts, goes on a truck, there's a number stamped on there, what it is. And you had to list it in the property book, the nomenclature of it, what truck or whatever, by name, what it is. Well, in 1947, right after the first year, stuff started coming to the armory by the truckloads, direct from the depot. We didn't have a thing in Des Moines like they got now, Camp Dodge. It wasn't fixed that way. So rather than wait and get that stuff moved around, I'd go down in the evening or Saturday and Sunday and uncrate it and get the number off of it and enter it in a book I had. And all I had to do is transcribe it when I did get one. Well, I was down to the Armory one Saturday. Dick Ain, do you remember Dick Ain? Mm-hmm. Dick was the ASD for the service company. He was there, and I was there. And the phone rang, and he answered. He says, for you. He said, this guy said, hello, Joe.
These are hard memories to bring up, I can tell.
Yeah. Anyway, I said, yeah, and he said, this is General Fountain. That was the colonel we had in Africa. He had been appointed commanding general of the 34th Division, reorganized. And he said to me, do you think Fairfield would like to have a band? And I said, I can't talk for Fairfield, but I would. Well, he said, do you think you can get 25, 28 men together in 2 weeks? I said, I think I can. And if I'd have said no, I don't know that many, we wouldn't have a band. But I said, yeah, I can.
So it's because of you that we have this band here, it
no
sounds
idea.
like.
Had no idea where in the hell I was going to find 25 young fellas right after a war to join the band.
Oh, wow, what a job.
But started with first seeing if I could get Dylan Lowell. I knew he was taught at the Army Band School, was in a band at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and Mr. Pence, the high school, didn't want him to do that. Oh. Well, he finally gave in, so then we started, and I think guys like Don Hartman, Jackson, I don't know, several guys, about a half a dozen guys that came home would sign up until we get enough men to take it out. he said, let me know in 2 weeks. So I think I had 28, and I called him and said, we'll be down the 15th of April and get you started, and that's how that came about.
No kidding.
Did you ask Amherst? Or,
No, I haven't seen him. I
yeah,
haven't seen him yet.
yeah.
So that's
I have a question.
How it
That's
got
how
to be
the
in
band
Fairfield.
here.
Wow. But you told us earlier before we started
Yeah.
that the current band, well, according to the program at the rededication, this says that it was organized April 1, 1921. And apparently, according to Joe, this isn't all accurate. So, we have a little picture down here that we want to try to show. I don't know if Richard can get it on here very well. This picture is dated, yeah. Tilt it some more. Okay, we're trying to get the glare off the glass here. I forget, August 9th through the 26th or something,
20.
1920?
Yeah.
1920. And are you in this picture?
No.
No. Joe's not in this picture. I guess, yeah, you wouldn't have been old enough
No.
then, would you? But at any rate, he said that the National Guard doesn't have record of this was the very first band?
The Iowa National
Really?
Guard, right. That's the first, this is the first band that this band has come from, was from 1918. That's when this band was organized. Been here ever since, under different titles.
Okay. And then I don't know, there's the bandmaster over here with the baton, and that baton is hanging on
Right
the
there.
wall over here.
Yeah.
If Richard can get over there and see that, because it's quite a beautiful piece. Framed very nicely. Now, let's see, the plaque says presented. I can't read it because of the glare.
Go
When did
read
you?
it.
Okay, I'll get up and read it. It says presented to Glenn Joe Little, 1930, 133rd Infantry Band, 1972, 34th Army Band. So that was presented to you in 1972?
Yeah, when I retired. And your husband, he was one of them.
You mean my dad?
Your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that pretty much and I will say this. I don't like to, but I do, I will. I think the band today is probably one of the best we've ever had. Musically, mainly because they go all over the state getting these people in there. And they've got, I think, 7 girls now, unheard of before. About like when I was in high school, drum major, we went to the state marching band contest, which was on the old football field at Iowa City on the east side of the river. And there was only 2 bands there that were all boys, us and the Eldor Training School. So, but that guy, he didn't believe girls should be in the marching band. So, but we classified the
Change.
Eldor anyway. But now, those gals out there, I've been back to stand watch, and when they're leaving or coming home, and they're in there working just like the boys. Probably one of the best things that ever happened, really. They don't do things like we used to. Well, they couldn't. I mean, what they say in their way to talk, they don't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And this fellow that's the band director, he's real good, real fine. So I hate to say somebody was better than we were, but you got to admit they are good.
Well, I think it's admirable of you to be able to look at
Well,
back and how they are today and say that it's good to have girls in it and change. It's hard to accept change, but I think you played an important part in the change over the years.
No, I've always said, and you've heard this too, maybe it's not what you know, how much you know, but or how much you know yourself is who you know. It gets you a lot of places. Now, only for this I know the band wouldn't be here before, because before the war, Cedar Rapids and Council Bluffs, that's where the 168th band come from, and they had a good band. And Des Moines would love to have the band now, but now I hope this new addition will keep the band right where it is, and I think it will, as long as they keep going like they are.
Well, the day they had the rededication, the band was incredible.
Yeah.
They were really fantastic. And they were very inspiring. And for those people because you don't really get to hear them that often except for Veterans Day and Memorial Day, really around here. So if you have a chance to go to one of those services and hear the band, it's tremendously worthwhile.
I like the chorus sings with them there on out on Armistice Day or Veterans Day, whatever they call it, and they really sound good.
Yes, they do.
Great.
So did you play, so what instrument did you play?
Bass.
You played bass.
When I played, yeah. Yeah.
And did you play outside the Army band, you know,
No, no.
with local people or anything?
No, just in the band.
Mm-hmm.
Had lots of chances to go to Des Moines and do better in rank and stuff, but I just didn't want to get out.
Yeah, sometimes you have to make the decision
Yeah.
to stay where you're happiest,
Yeah.
I think.
Nowadays, Don Samuelson now, he had chances to go to Des Moines for better position in the band, but then with the business and the selling cars there, and he didn't want to leave the band, and he didn't.
Mm-hmm. I think he retired or is just retiring. And
Yeah, he did.
my husband's uncle, so we're close to Don.
Yeah.
And
Well, he's my nephew.
I knew that.
So you guys are related somehow?
Yeah.
I think Fairfield is very, very fortunate to be able to call home for the band, and maybe we need to have more appreciation of that.
Did you ever know a two-letter word that would change your life, for the time being anyway? We were in London. We went from Ireland to London, 4th July 1942, to dedicate a Red Cross Club, first one in London, in Britain. And General Eisenhower is going to be the main speaker. And I visited with him a lot, to the point where he called me Joe all the time, but I never called him Mike, I called him General. He pulled a chair up. We're sitting in the lobby, this old hotel that the Red Cross, it had been bombed out. The Red Cross bought it and turned it into a Red Cross Club hotel. You could take a 3-day pass and go in there in that hotel, bed and breakfast for 50 cents. And it's American breakfast. Over there you couldn't, like bacon or sausage or pancakes. They didn't know nothing of that. So the orchestra all set up ready to play, and as closest from here to stand, he had pulled up a high back chair, put his arms on it, and he said, how would you fellows like to be stationed at my headquarters for a duration? Yeah, everybody, big deal. Well, he said, Joe, give me your name, serial number, and you go back to Ireland and we see what we can do. So we did, and we talked about it, going back to Ireland. And 2 months anyway, maybe 3 passed, we hadn't heard nothing. And one day, S1 of the regiment called me over and said, I've got a letter for you. And I went over there, and and he handed it to me, and right away I looked, and at the top of the page was a flag with 2 stars. I knew that was from my Major General. Looked down, and he signed it. And he started, if the following named personnel can be replaced, they'll be attached to my headquarters for a duration. Oh, boy, that's great. And I read it again. And I said, well, what? He said, they can't be replaced. Your commanding officer said he couldn't replace you. That were if. Now, if he had said, the following named personnel will be attached, that'd been all there was to it. But that ain't the way he put it.
Yeah.
And that 2-letter word. And I thought about that a lot. Because shortly after that, when we went overseas, he took each regiment was made up of 3 battalions of infantry. He took our second battalion, never even went to Africa. They stayed in London as headquarters, Eisenhower's headquarters, guards, and were there until we got up into Italy, and they came back to the regiment, to the division, and why, I don't know. But I was telling you about that battle in Africa at Kasserine Pass. They have a front they call a battle front. We were covering a regimental front at 3 battalions with 2 battalions. That left quite a hole between men. But they came back to us in Italy. Now, he didn't do that with those people. He just said they'll come over. And probably what made us more mad, there was probably more good musicians around in the division than we had. I mean, guys that were drafted, find good musicians. But this band director we had, he didn't like the orchestra anyway because they was getting all the glory, all the good things.
Well, that sounds like quite an interesting
Yeah.
time. Now, were you married at that time? Was
Yeah,
your
I
wife
was.
here waiting back?
No, that was my first
back then?
wife.
Your first wife?
We were married in August 1940 and went south in 42. We left here in February and went south. And then I didn't see her again until 45. And it amazes me nowadays, these people go any place. Oh, hell, they're going to be gone 6 months, and they got telephones. They can call them back and talk to them. We didn't have such a thing.
Yeah.
I suppose letters were
Yeah.
no email.
Yeah,
No.
right.
No, nothing. And you couldn't write. You couldn't say anything about that. Give anything away, like the names of towns. Mm-hmm. You couldn't write that in a letter. An officer would read your mail, and if it was in there, he'd cut it out with a razor blade.
Uh-huh.
And then whoever you're writing to was wondering, what the hell was he saying?
Yeah, right. So all your mail was checked before it was actually sent out, huh?
Yeah, right. Before you couldn't seal it. You had to give it to your commanding officer, and they read them. So you didn't say it. Yeah. And of course at home they'd wonder where he's at or what they knew. No, they didn't know what you're doing either. They didn't know anything. You couldn't say anything.
Were you able to receive mail from home?
Huh?
Were you able to receive mail from here?
Oh yeah.
On a regular basis?
Well, yeah. Generally about the fastest mail come from here would be 2 weeks. Mostly 3 weeks by the time we come. Packages. When we got to Africa, it was after Christmas. We hadn't received any Christmas mail yet. And when we was out on that gobbler's knob drying everything off, here it come. boxes and everything. And that was a bad thing. They gave the order, get rid of everything but one duffel bag. Well, you had two, and you couldn't. Hell, you had cakes and cookies and candy and
Bad timing.
sweaters, underwear, socks, and you didn't have no place to put it. And we set up all in one night, and I had some hard candy and some cookies. My wife and her mother, she made a oatmeal and raisin drop cookie. It was real good with nuts in them. And they came in a coffee can, 3-pound coffee can, sealed shut, and opened them up, and all you could see was cobwebs.
Oh.
Just full of worms. And I set them up on a shelf, and Hartman and Jackson and a couple other guys and I was in this building, and I'd been out digging up someplace to play. Come back, and I was going to empty them cookies out. And one of them got in, there was no cookies in there, just a few maggots in the bottom. I said, who ate my cookies? And of course, Hartman, he had to laugh. And I said, I want to come here. I said, what's that there in the bottom of this? Well, they're maggots. I said, they were in them cookies too. Oh, God. Yeah.
Oh.
Hartman, he liked that. He liked to pull stuff on people like that.
I think he was kind of a jokester, wasn't he?
Huh?
He was kind of a jokester,
Yeah,
wasn't
he
he?
was. Yeah.
So have you ever played for any presidents?
Oh, well, yeah. One that I know, when Eisenhower was running for, I don't know if he was the president or running for president. Anyway, he was going to be at the state fair, and we were ordered up to play for it. And he was on the band. Did you know Jim Pomeroy?
I know that name.
His folks lived across from the high school. We went up on a bus and pulled inside the gate, and there's a building there that we wore fatigues up there, and we got into a pressed, clean cotton uniform and our parade boots, and then all we had to do is walk across the road and go into the end of the grandstand and walk by we did. But before we left there, Jim come up and said, Joe, I've got 2 left boots. I can't wear the right. What'll I do? I said, wear them. You brought them. So he did, and he played the bass horn too. And we paraded down in front of the bandstand, the reviewing stand, because there's nobody there. And he came in, and we played 5 ruffles and flourishes, and the general's mark, or Hail to the Chief. He must have been the president, or we wouldn't have played Hail to the Chief. And anyway, he gave a talk, and we pulled away from where we were standing just a little bit to the left of the reviewing stand, and went by. When we went by, I saluted, and he run down on the corner and said, "Hey, Joe!" Isn't that something? And I don't know to this day how he knew I was there.
Huh.
Well, that's a neat story.
But I never saw him again. But he was a great general. Yeah.
Well, is there anything on this wall back here that we should talk about? You've got some interesting pictures back here.
Well,
Maybe we can just sit here and our camera will zoom in. The picture up at the top on the right-hand corner, that's a band picture.
that is the first year I became drum major, 1937, Camp Ripley, Minnesota. The one on the left over here, that was my first year. Second bass horn from the left. That was the first year. That just below that white picture there, can you see that? That's in red. It blocked every place the 34th Division fought in Africa and Italy. The picture right square in the middle there, underneath the big one, that's with Eisenhower. That's in the hotel where I told you we played 4th July 42. I'm in that picture with him. And that picture, that board up the top, Don Samuelson got my photo album and took out some of the pictures that he wanted to take a picture of. And the picture, see where Don Samuelson's singing there? Right below it, the little picture. That was taken in the Officers Club in Florence, Italy. And the picture here to the right below that and on the bottom, behind the, with the band marching there, at Carol Morris's Miss Universe parade in Ottumwa. And the one right behind the flags is in Louisiana, it's capital of Louisiana, Baton Rouge. And I'll tell you something about that. We went, the whole regiment, you see them down the street back of us. We went uptown, and a little ways from town is a cemetery, a Confederate cemetery, big one. And we played, the whole regiment was standing in there, and we played 3 or 4 numbers, and the master of ceremonies introduced an old colonel, somebody. Everybody south got white hair as a colonel, it seems. Anyway, he come to the mic, and this is what he said. This is the first time Yankee soldiers have been in this cemetery, and as far as I'm concerned, it'll be the last time. And here's a whole regiment of standing there. Yeah, what he said.
Oh my.
Lots of things. And after the parade, we was to parade down by the university in Baton Rouge, and the sororities had wooden barrels, big ones, half of them full of lemonade for the troops, the regiment to drink. Now there was enough barrels there for everybody to have lots of lemonade, but it rained. Oh, rained by the bucket full. And we'd pulled out right along at the end where they set up. The troops kept right on going. They never even stopped. When they got by, we put our horn down and we drank lemonade, but we didn't get it all drank. Oh, it was good.
That's great. So how many years again were you head of the National Guard
What?
band? How many years again?
Oh, 40 years and 2 months.
Wow.
2 months. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. They always know. Like when I talked to my dad, he said 10 years and 8 months and so many days or something like that. Maybe that's not right, but he had it down to the months and years and days. It's incredible that everybody seems to remember those details.
Back before the war, if you served 25, got anybody that served 25 years, you'd have a big division parade for them. And you get a ring, get a nice ring, that's a 25-year ring. They don't do that no more. Honey, where's that? Do you know where that state ring pin is I got? Right quick.
Which one?
A 25-year ring. It's right there. You remember Greenfield, Leonard Greenfield? He was a general, brigadier general. Well, we were up at Camp Ripley, and we changed uniforms 3 times in about 30 minutes. They couldn't decide what the hell they wanted to wear. And they kept changing, finally got uniform print, went out, the whole division, 12,000 men, so he could get 25 years. There's a lot of years in those days. And this, I hope she can find it. Because they quit many years ago giving them. It's in a box, huh?
Because you would have went on to get a 30 and a 40 year also.
Well, they don't.
They don't do that.
25 is all they think they're supposed to be dead, but I guess, I don't know.
You showed them.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Talking about retiring, the other day,
Oh, here we go. Here we go. See, does it go this way? Yeah, it goes that way.
Oh, how nice. And this is,
had diamonds in there, see them? They're little chip diamonds.
Yep. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
That's a beautiful piece.
very nice.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, we just really should thank you. You're kind of I guess, the grandfather or father, however you want to say it,
Yeah.
of the Guard band here in Fairfield, and we have you to thank for that, and appreciate all your wonderful years of service and everything that you've done for Fairfield and the band. And
I know Colonel Fountain, he was just trying to, I think, pay us back for a good job done for him.
So you came a long way from that young boy that didn't want to go back to school to
God, yeah.
to all these
Yeah.
years. So
Well, it's like I told you, not so much what you know, it's who you know.
well, you must have known some good
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it was you.
No.
well, Joe, we really appreciate taking an hour out of your day to do this.
Right.
And Fairfield will be enriched by our
Right.
talk with you today. And we're going to kind of end the show because we have a little something in the kitchen waiting for us.
A surprise for us. Thank you very much,
Well,
Joe.
you're
This has
welcome.
been great.
You're welcome.